We're coming off another wild week of fantasy football, guys. And of course, we've still got some bye weeks that we have to deal with. But we're going into the top 30 wide receiver rankings today for week 8 fantasy football, guys. And obviously, at the end of every single rankings video, I give you my favorite underdog flex option at the particular position. So make sure to stay tuned, watch till the end to see my underdog flex wide receiver option for week 8 fantasy football. We're giving away another hat today, guys. So go down there, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below for a chance to win this free FFN hat right now. So let's go ahead and just dive right into the rankings right here. I've got Tyreek Hill still, but I've got another guy joining him in his tier this week because AJ Brown's been phenomenal. We'll start with Tyreek Hill. You can see the numbers on the screen. Tyreek Hill is still excellent. Like, nothing really changed last week other than the fact that Tyreek Hill was basically just, like, if you watch the game, Tyreek Hill dropped a for sure touchdown pass against the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday night. That would have changed the outlook entirely. Like, Tyreek Hill would have been just as great as we've come to expect this year. And watching his fantasy performance on Sunday versus the Eagles, it was disappointing. The dude still had over 20 fantasy points. Like, it was still great, just not as great as what we've come to expect from Tyreek Hill. We've come to expect 25 to 30 point games from Tyreek Hill. He's fine. He's taking on the New England Patriots this week. They can't stop him. I'm not worried. AJ Brown, though, he belongs right now. He's on fire. The dude is just on freaking fire. 5 straight games with 125 plus yards. This dude is just all over the field. He's almost impossible to stop. This guy is just so physical. He's so mean. He's so good after the catch. And he's taking on the Washington Commanders defense. Now, earlier in the year, Washington actually held their ground against Philadelphia. So I'm not saying that, like, Philadelphia's going to come out here and just rip them apart. But AJ Brown, to me, he's a no-brainer at this point in the top 2. And until he falters back, AJ Brown's probably going to maintain this spot for a minute. Because Jamar Chase is at number 3. And of course, Jamar Chase is a great option. There's no question about it. Like, Jamar Chase, as soon as after that Arizona game, I was back in on him. Jamar Chase came out of that game, had a little bit of another down game. Not a bad game at all. He had 80 yards on 70 catches in that game. But it wasn't top tier Jamar Chase. This week against the 49ers defense that could be depleted after all the injuries that they suffered on Monday night. I'm filming this on Monday night after the Vikings game where the 49ers got embarrassed a little bit on the road against Minnesota. Jamar Chase, to me, is just back in elite territory. Like, there's no reason that Jamar Chase is not going to be great. You could see the target total that he gets on a per-week basis on the screen right now. He gets so many targets per week. This guy is just simply too explosive, too important to the offense. You can never have Jamar Chase outside of the top 5 if both him and Burrow are on the field together. Stephon Diggs at number 4, taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Thursday night game. Stephon Diggs, to me, even in a down week, you know, where they played the New England Patriots and they lost, Stephon Diggs still found the end zone because the reality is here, it's not even close. Everybody knows this. This is not hard-hitting analysis coming at you right now. Stephon Diggs is clearly the best player on the Buffalo Bills. Aside from Josh Allen, of course. The best playmaker is no doubt Stephon Diggs. You can see the numbers on the screen. The importance is there, and the dude is producing. I don't care if they win or lose. Stephon Diggs is getting you great fantasy output, especially this week against Tampa Bay, that is starting to fall apart a little bit offensively and defensively. Number 5, Cooper Kupp. Coming off the bad game and taking on the Dallas Cowboys. I get it. Cooper Kupp was bad last week. And that was coming into a week where I thought Cooper Kupp was going to dominate. Obviously, I was wrong on Cooper Kupp in week 7 versus Pittsburgh. And he's got a tougher defensive matchup this week against the Dallas Cowboys. Here's the reality. Cooper Kupp was shut down by Pittsburgh in a way that he hadn't been shut down for a long time in fantasy football. I'm not banking on it happening again. I don't care what defense he plays. He's usually just super consistent, super excellent all the time. You can see the importance on the screen. It's not going away. Cooper Kupp, bad game. Pittsburgh's defense definitely set out to stop him. And I'm sure Dallas's defense will. But Cooper Kupp is not going to get shut down 2 weeks in a row. I'm taking that to the bank and telling my audience he's top 5 still. Number 6, Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's excellent. And even in a just an utter beatdown that they received from the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday, Amon-Ra St. Brown came back and played well in garbage time. And that's the important thing is, regardless of if they're winning or losing or in a really tight game, Amon-Ra St. Brown's their most important piece, especially without David Montgomery. No news yet on David Montgomery's return. It doesn't matter. They're taking on the Raiders this week. They're gonna they're coming into this game on Monday night absolutely pissed off that they just got embarrassed on national television by the Baltimore Ravens. So Amon-Ra St. Brown to me, absolute no-brainer. Number 7, Davante Adams taking on the Detroit Lions in that game. I get it. Davante Adams has been a massive disappointment lately. But don't forget what this guy is doing on a volume basis. Look at the numbers on the screen. The volume is there. He had 12 targets again last week, and I get it. The optics have been bad for Davante Adams. Like, he's come out, he's said some things to the media, and he's obviously kind of taking shots at the team, and he's been doing that really since the offseason. Dude clearly doesn't want to be there, but this guy is he's just too important to this team. And he's too good of a player, and his production has dropped, but his on-field ability, I've watched all year, that has not dropped off. He's still an elite level player, and it's only a matter of time, and it can happen any week where he absolutely just tears it up again in fantasy. I'm not putting this guy on my bench in fantasy football, and in fact, I called him a buy low trade target this week. I expect a rebound game in the next week or two from Davante Adams. He's not outside my top 10. Mike Evans at number 8. He belongs in the top 10 right now. Taking on the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo on the Thursday night game. And there's a lot of reasons for Mike Evans in the top 10. First of all, he's been playing great. Like, I said it last week leading into week 7 fantasy football. I said Mike Evans is a great buy low trade target. He had 10 targets in that week 6 game and only came down with 4 catches, and Baker missed him on a long touchdown ball. He didn't miss him this past week. He got the long touchdown against the Atlanta Falcons, and he had a great fantasy output. The reality is here, him and Baker work pretty well together. And Baker's starting to fall apart a little bit, but he's got Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin's coming into this week with an injury designation already. So Baker Mayfield, actually, Baker's also injured as well. From what I've seen, Baker looks like he's going to play. So Mike Evans, to me, he's simply just been playing too well. And even against the Buffalo defense, I don't really have a lot of questions or concerns here with Mike Evans right now. Puka Nacua, dude, he's just a baller. This guy's just a baller. Against the Dallas Cowboys, I don't care. Puka Nacua is a baller, man. And I've been saying for weeks now, Puka Nacua, the sell high mentality on him has gone way too far. This guy is a legit player in this league. He established himself without Cooper Kupp, and with Cooper Kupp, 2 out of his 3 games with Cooper Kupp have been great in fantasy football. And in fact, that bad game, he was literally inches short from a touchdown. That's how close he was to having 3 great games with Cooper Kupp. So I've got no question marks on Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua, in fact, with Cooper Kupp back, still is leading the team in targets over that time period. Not the season, over the time period with Cooper Kupp, he's still beating out Cooper Kupp by 2 targets. Puka Nacua is the real deal. I've got no questions on Puka Nacua. I feel very confident telling my audience Puka Nacua is easy top 10. Number 10, I've got Adam Thielen versus the Houston Texans this week. It's honestly one of the hardest projections to make is with Adam Thielen. Because here's the thing with Adam Thielen. When you look at his numbers on the screen, you can see the volumes through the roof. He gets an insane amount of targets per week. But you can also see that there's, based on the yards per game, there's some games where it's like, unless he's getting a touchdown, he may get like 7 catches for 60 yards, which isn't bad. Like, nothing's bad about that, but he's very dependent on 2 things. 1, getting in the end zone. 2, garbage time. And that's the good thing with him, is that a lot of the production that Adam Thielen sees comes later in the game through garbage time. He's going to have that most weeks than not. They're taking on the Houston Texans this weekend, which is a good defense. So Adam Thielen, going to be back in the garbage time situation. He's clearly the wide receiver 1. I don't have reservations here with Adam Thielen. but I will say he's a little bit of a harder guy to project week to week just because of the team and just because you typically don't see a wide receiver on this bad of a team doing this well in fantasy football right now. Jordan Addison at number 11 taking on the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay. Obviously, you probably saw what Jordan Addison did on Monday night versus the San Francisco 49ers. Dude was a monster, and I called Jordan Addison a buy low trade target heading into week 7. Feeling pretty good about that, but I'm more happy if you traded for him because that's what matters to me is if you got him and if you played him this week, that's great. You probably won your week 7 matchup. Fire him up again. Green Bay's defense is severely lacking. They're not only not playing well, they're injured at key positions. Jair Alexander missed the week 7 game. Chances are decent that he misses it again. Green Bay's a mess right now. And Minnesota's coming in confident. They played really, really well against San Francisco. And Jordan Addison is clearly not only the wide receiver 1, but the dude is playing really, really good football right now. You do not put Jordan Addison on your bench. He is must start right now for the foreseeable future. Number 12, CeeDee Lamb here, taking on the Los Angeles Rams. So, obviously the narrative on CeeDee Lamb largely has been disappointing to the start of the season. What I said, when I called him a buy low trade target several weeks ago, was that you could expect more production here. And right before the bye week, when they played the Chargers on Monday night and they won that game, CeeDee Lamb was very important again. He had his first 100-yard game of the season, and he had 7 receptions. CeeDee Lamb's coming back. All he really needs to do is find the end zone at this point. And it absolutely could happen against this abysmal Rams defense. It absolutely could happen. CeeDee Lamb, I have no questions on. He just has not been spectacular as we're used to seeing over the previous years. CeeDee Lamb's going to be fine. I'll take the money on this matchup here against the Rams defense. Number 13, Brandon Ayuk versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Honestly, I had Brandon Ayuk slotted here before the game on Monday night versus the Vikings. And, you know, I got to be honest here. I'm a little bit concerned with what I've seen from Brock Purdy over the last 2 weeks. Am I going to move Brandon Ayuk down as a result? I'm not going to do it. And the reason why is because he's clearly the wide receiver 1 in this offense right now. No Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk is the guy. And Brandon Ayuk has been open. The problem has actually been Brock Purdy. And this is kind of the first time we've seen Brock Purdy at the NFL level not play up to the level we've seen from him since he started playing. So I'm a little worried about the Brock Purdy dynamic. I think this is going to be a really competitive game, though. They're coming off 2 straight losses. Brandon Ayuk is a great player, and he's got another week without Deebo Samuel. I like Brandon Ayuk's chances to bounce back, have a good game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Number 14, Nico Collins, taking on the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. I continue to be higher on Nico Collins than most people. Nico Collins is a very good receiver, guys. And not only has he been good, he's the wide receiver 1 in Houston, and the matchup is ripe. The matchup this week is fantastic. Against the Carolina Panthers, CJ Stroud's playing excellent football right now, and Nico Collins has been the guy. He's almost averaging 100 yards per game. You can see the numbers on the screen. Nico Collins is super important to this team's offense. I got no issues here with Nico Collins. I think he's just way better than people do. I think he's a great receiver. It's going to vary week to week because they kind of had that Philadelphia vibe going on where it's like one of the guys dominates and one of them is not great. Tank Dell, Nico Collins, they've split games this year. I think Nico Collins is pretty much a surefire, locked and loaded wide receiver 2 on the high end, wide receiver 1 on the low end for fantasy football. And in this type of game, I'm taking Nico Collins more often than not. Jacoby Myers at number 15, taking a massive leap. He deserves it. Taking on the Detroit Lions on Monday night. I don't care who the quarterback is at this point. Jacoby Myers is basically must start. He's been fantastic in fantasy football. And I don't know how he's doing it, honestly. With the quarterback carousel he's dealing with and being with Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, it doesn't matter. Like, you put Jacoby Myers in your lineup at this point. You can't afford to have him on your bench because every single week, you might talk yourself out of it. And believe me, I've done it. I've got him in a dynasty league, and this past week was only the 2nd week of the season I've started him. So I get it. Like, you could talk yourself out of Jacoby Myers very easily. At this point, you can't do it. He's leaving. If you do that, you're leaving way too many points on the bench. Jacoby Myers definitely in here at the top 15. Christian Kirk taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh this week. I said it leading into the season, and it's come to fruition. Christian Kirk is the wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville. And the reason is because, number one, the contract is there. Follow the money. They signed him to a 4-year, $72 million deal just over a year ago, and over half of the value of the contract was guaranteed. Number two, he's got great chemistry with Trevor Lawrence. 2 straight weeks with touchdowns, taking on a defense that has looked much better over the previous weeks, but Christian Kirk and this Jacksonville offense, they're finding their groove. I'll take the better offense against a really good defense. Christian Kirk has simply just been too good in fantasy football lately. Chris Olave, down here at 17, taking on the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis. Listen, I talked a little bit about Chris Olave on my Monday night live stream, and I expressed my concern. I am concerned with Chris Olave. I gotta be honest here. Chris Olave is in a situation where when you look at the targets on the screen right now, something's not adding up, right? Like, you see that amount of targets, you should be absolutely getting close to 100 yards per game. What's happening here? I'll tell you what's happening. Him and Derek Carr, there's a disconnect right now in New Orleans. There's something going on. I watched that Thursday night game. Chris Olave made a lot of just boneheaded mistakes. And some of it was on Derek Carr, but the deep route that he ran down the sidelines where he just literally stopped, it's like, what are you doing? So there's something going on there for sure. Obviously, Chris Olave got arrested on Monday. That's not a big deal. It was just a simple traffic violation charge. It's probably not going to result in him missing the game as far as I've seen so far this week. So I'm not worried about that, but I am worried about what's happening in New Orleans because something's not working here. He's still got the target volume though, and that's exactly why he's here at number 17. Zay Flowers taking on the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona. Baltimore has looked really, really good over the past several weeks. And credit to Lamar Jackson, who I recently called not a very good quarterback. He's looked a lot better, and he makes me look like a moron. So I acknowledge that. I'm never afraid to acknowledge when I'm wrong. Lamar Jackson's looked like a great player again over the past several weeks. And Zay Flowers is clearly the wide receiver 1. You see the target total on the screen right here. You see his capability when you watch the games. Zay Flowers is always a shoo-in to be in the top 20 at least at this point because the offense looks great. When you're getting that amount of targets in this kind of offense that looks absolutely fantastic and dominant, Zay Flowers absolutely has to be in the top 20 every single week until proven otherwise. Number 19, DJ Moore, taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. It's kind of similar to Adam Thielen in a way where it's like week to week, it's a little bit hard to kind of project DJ Moore out because DJ Moore is also dealing with a quarterback carousel right now, but he's not shining through. He hasn't been great lately, but he's still as important as he is every single week. He's clearly the wide receiver 1, and he's clearly a good player who's done very well with the conditions he's been offered this year. I can't really find it in my heart to tell my audience to confidently start DJ Moore week to week, though. This matchup, though, is very good. The Chargers defense is not good. They're just not good. It's not that they don't have good players, but they're just not a good defense right now. DJ Moore, though, week to week, with the quarterback situation he's got, he could easily be a really bad start week to week. So the reason he's down here this low is because of the inconsistency of that ceiling and the floor every week, but he still belongs inside the top 20. Number 20, Jalen Waddle versus the New England Patriots. Been a huge disappointment this year, I know. And even like in his best games this year, it's not been a very high upside performance. He hasn't even cracked 100 yards yet this season. Not very good. I get it. That's why he's down this low, but still with the explosive offense, they're going to come in pissed off against the New England Patriots. Jalen Waddle, to me, still very capable of breaking off a big play. It just hasn't looked right this year for Jalen Waddle. He doesn't really look like his explosive self like he did last year. So that's why he's down here at number 20. But again, in most cases, I'm not putting Jalen Waddle on my bench unless I've got an option like, I would start Zay Flowers over him. I would start Jacoby Myers over Jalen Waddle at this point. But in a lot of situations, I'm not putting Jalen Waddle on my bench. Number 21, Amari Cooper against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. Amari Cooper, it's so hard to project him week to week. I discussed it last week. I was big on him again, and he absolutely disappointed again. Just acknowledge that if you have Amari Cooper, most of the time I'm going to tell you to start him. That's just how I feel about Amari Cooper. Because when he booms, it's good. And when times are good with Amari Cooper, they're really good. But you just have to admit and accept when you have Amari Cooper on your team, you're going to live with really bad games, and you don't know when they're going to be. He's a ticking time bomb, and it's like playing Russian roulette. That's just what we had to accept with Amari Cooper at this point. Number 22, Michael Pittman versus the New Orleans Saints this week. Honestly, if it wasn't for the long touchdown, Michael Pittman's week would have been terrible. Michael Pittman, in fact, was upset about his usage after that game versus the Cleveland Browns. Michael Pittman, to me, is just in a situation where without Anthony Richardson, I think the target volume every week will be unpredictable. I just don't think that he has enough chemistry with Gardner Minshew to really count on him getting 8 to 10 targets per game. He is the wide receiver one, but Josh Downs is quickly becoming a favorite of Gardner Minshew. So there's no ignoring that right there. So Michael Pittman, to me, good option still because he's got the big play ability. But in this week against the Saints defense, with Josh Downs emerging, he's not a must start. I'll just put it that way. Still belonging inside the top 22 because of that ceiling he has, though. 23, Garrett Wilson taking on the New York Giants. Absolutely love the matchup. If he had Aaron Rodgers, he'd easily be a top 5 player this week. But of course, we know that's not the reality. He still has Zach Wilson, who, to his credit, has looked way better over the past several weeks than we have seen all year from Zach Wilson and all of his career, in fact. So that's the reason Garrett Wilson is back inside the top 25, is because Zach Wilson's looked better, and obviously Garrett Wilson's the wide receiver one in this offense. Nobody ever questioned that. The question is, what is his upside week to week? I'll tell you this, based on what I've seen from Zach Wilson over the recent weeks, he's completing more passes. They're trusting him a little bit more. And Garrett Wilson has been producing as a result because he's always open. Garrett Wilson's not the problem, Zach Wilson is. But with Zach Wilson's better play and the matchup this week against the Giants, I like my chances with Garrett Wilson in a lot of matchups this week. He's inside the top 25 because of the matchup and because Garrett Wilson is starting to find him on a more consistent basis. Devonta Smith is below him at 24 against the Washington Commanders. And honestly, like Devonta Smith, the reason he's below Garrett Wilson is because at least with Garrett Wilson, he's the wide receiver one and he'll consistently get like 8 targets per game. Devonta Smith, week to week, unpredictable right now. And I'm not saying I'm benching him in most situations. Like most of the time, I'm still going to continue to tell you guys to start Devonta Smith. But the reality is kind of similar to Calvin Ridley in a way where this guy's been killing people. Like he's been killing weeks. So it's hard for me to put him anywhere inside the top 15 or 20 right now, just because he's been so bad in fantasy football lately. But the involvement is still there. As you can see on the screen, it just has not been good lately. He's been on a bad stretch because A.J. Brown's just killing it right now. So in the matchup, Washington, I think it's a good matchup. I think he can bounce back. I just prefer a guy like Garrett Wilson, who I know is going to get the majority of the targets in this offense. 25, T. Higgins is in the same boat as Devonta Smith. Definitely worse off, though. Taking on the San Francisco 49ers, they're going to be pissed. That's not even the big problem, though. Look at T. Higgins' stats on the screen. Like, the numbers on the screen speak for themselves in a very negative way. In a contract year, T. Higgins has been bad. And honestly, I think it has something to do with Joe Burrow not being 100%. But T. Higgins, I would expect way more from him in a contract year. I think he can get going. I'm not counting him out for the rest of the season. I'm just saying right now, it's been a big disappointment. So I think T. Higgins, to me, I just can't rank him higher than number 25 right now until I see more from him at this point. Drake London taking on the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee. Matchup is certainly there. And this is really as high as I can feel like I can rank him right now. Drake London week to week, you already know it's Russian roulette like Amari Cooper, except on a more extreme level without quite as much upside week to week. So Drake London, the player, of course we all like him. Great player. Dude's a great athlete. Clearly their best wide receiver in this offense. But week to week, he could get 10 targets or he could get 2. Just what happens with Drake London on this Atlanta Falcons offense. Atlanta's offense is one of the most frustrating in the league. And week to week, I don't know where to put Drake London. But this week against the Tennessee Titans, And based on Drake London's performance lately, he belongs inside the top 30 for sure. Number 27, Marquise Brown, Baltimore Ravens, the matchup here. Listen, I've said it for weeks on Marquise Brown. The upside week to week is just not that high. He's on a bad team. And you could see what the Arizona Cardinals have done in the second half over the season. It's been terrible. They've been terrible in the second half. So I've got a problem here with Marquise Brown's upside because this team is 1-6 now. Maybe Kyler Murray comes back here soon, but Marquise Brown is just in a bad offense, and I've read that he's getting trade interest this week. So, Marquise Brown may be on his way out of Arizona. It's just too messy right now with Marquise Brown. I think that Marquise Brown's upside just simply is not there, especially against a very, very good Baltimore Ravens defense. Calvin Ridley at 28 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I can't tell you guys to confidently play him right now. He's killing my audience right now. And I don't like that. I don't want my audience being killed by Calvin Ridley in a weekly fantasy performance. But he's doing that right now. I can't tell you guys to play Calvin Ridley until I see otherwise. This guy's the problem with this guy is that his workload varies week to week. It's not just him, he dropped a couple of balls. Like, he's done that, but the workload varies week to week. And if your workload varies week to week, like a Drake London type, then you have to be ranked like a Drake London type. Calvin Ridley goes out, gets 12 targets some weeks, and then goes out and gets 4 targets the next week. It's too inconsistent, and he's not been that good. The upside just hasn't been there lately. Calvin Ridley inside the top 30 for sure, largely is due to the result of bye weeks and injuries. I've got a lot of caution applied with Calvin Ridley right now. George Pickens at 29 versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. I was wrong heading into the Week 7 game about George Pickens and the Pittsburgh Steelers offense as a whole. George Pickens was still great. Another 100-yard receiving game. The dude just really doesn't need that many targets to be great. You give this guy 6 to 7 targets, he's going to take 4 of those and get at least 80 yards. He's just such a good player. It doesn't change the fact that the offensive upside is low. So, taking on a Jacksonville defense that has been much better than we expected, I definitely could see a world where George Pickens has a little bit of a down game. But with the upside, with the importance of the offense still there last week against the Rams, I'm comfortable having him inside my top 30. Round out top 30, my guy, Jack Smith-Njigba versus the Cleveland Browns. He's the only Seattle Seahawk on here. Why? Because Tyler Lockett last week, without DK Metcalf, he was bad. DK Metcalf, I've got a lot of issues with DK Metcalf. In fact, I read DK Metcalf earlier on Monday. There's reports that maybe they just benched him on Sunday rather than him being injured as the main reason that he was out. Seattle may be frustrated with DK Metcalf right now. Jackson Smith-Njigba, their first round pick this year, had his best game as a pro in Week 7 versus Arizona. He's going to build off of that. This team loves him. His teammates loves him. Geno Smith loves him. And it's going to grow more this week. I've got Jackson Smith-Njigba inside the top 30. I love it this week versus the Cleveland Browns. And as promised, my underdog wide receiver flex option of the week this week, he's making a second appearance in this season, and it's Kendrick Bourne of the New England Patriots, taking on the Miami Dolphins in Miami. So Kendrick Bourne has had several stretches this season where he's been a legit viable fantasy option. And he had a very good week last week versus the Buffalo Bills. Now, if he didn't get the touchdown, it wouldn't have been as great. But the reality here with the New England Patriots and Kendrick Bourne is that Kendrick Bourne's coming into this matchup where he's coming in, obviously the wide receiver 1 right now in New England, no question about that. Miami's defense, they're depleted in that secondary. Xavier Howard, he's been out recently. Jalen Ramsey, obviously he's out right now. There's a lot of issues in this Dolphins backfield, as we saw against the Philadelphia Eagles. A.J. Brown ripped a new one. Obviously, Kendrick Bourne is not A.J. Brown, but I like his chances this week against a very depleted secondary against the Miami Dolphins in Week 8 fantasy football. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below and what questions you need answered before Week 8 fantasy football. And if you want to see some buy low trade targets that you need to get before Week 8 fantasy football, click on this video right here.